Okay, the time now being 7 o'clock, I'd like to call this meeting to order. As far as comments go, I had the pleasure this afternoon of finally meeting Councillor Morrison at the economic development event that was held at the arena in Seaforth. I thought the event went very well. Is it McSweeney? Was that the name of the group, Mr. CAO, that we've hired?
That's correct. Yeah, McSweeney Associates, yes.
Yeah, I thought they did a really good job. And, you know, sometimes when you think you're going to sit down and talk about stuff for 2 hours, that 2 hours went by quickly. We were, in fact, it was already after 3 o'clock when they said, you know what, we've already passed our time in that, and we needed to move on. So I thought things went really well, and it was a very good meeting, and I hope we get some very good results out of them. So I don't really have anything else at this point, but I would say we would like to acknowledge that the land we stand upon today is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Neutral peoples. And can I get a mover and a seconder for the agenda, please? Moved by Councillor Wilby, second by Councillor Morrison, that the agenda for the regular meeting of council dated May 3rd of 2022 be adopted as circulated. All those in favor? And motion carries. And under disclosure of pecuniary interests, I do know that Councillor Deal has sent in her notice that she had a conflict, and I think it was under 12.1 on the agenda. I may be incorrect with that number, but I think that was it. So just so that council is aware of that. Minutes of the previous meeting. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Steffler, second by Councillor Chartrand, that the Council of the Municipality of Huron East approve the following council meeting minutes as printed and circulated. And that's the regular meeting of council on April 19th of 2022. Any comments or questions on the minutes? All those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. Public meetings, hearings, and delegations. I don't see anything listed on the agenda this evening. Accounts payable are the next meeting. Reports and recommendations of municipal officers. 8.1, site plan control agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a report that I brought forward to council. It's with regards to a site plan control agreement. If council recall, we had a planning report that was brought forward by our county planner in regards to a residential development at 255 Albert Street in Brussels. And this is the one that's adjacent to the Brussels Agromart. And one of there were certainly some points of concern expressed by council. The planning approval was conditional upon going into a site plan control agreement. And that was particularly to address the potential or the potential for conflict with the adjacent industrial zoned land. So the site plan control agreement includes some provisions with respect to soundproofing of windows and central air conditioning, includes the construction of a fence, a privacy fence, and a hedge on the north property line to provide a visual and acoustic barrier or buffer between the residential and industrial zone property. And it also includes an acknowledgement within that will be registered on title that the adjacent property will not be subject to any issues with its existing zoning and land uses in industrial property. So we don't normally go into site plan control agreements for residential developments like this, but because of the condition of the planning approval and the adjacency of that industrial zone property, it makes total sense. And so the recommendation here is just simply for council to consider the bylaw to adopt the site plan control agreement with the developer. Happy to answer any questions.
Can I get a mover and a seconder for the motion, please? Moved by Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor McClellan, that the Council of the Municipality of Huron East consider a bylaw for a site plan control agreement between the Municipality of Huron East and JN Renos and Construction Limited for development of a semi-detached residential home at 255 Albert Street, Brussels, Ontario, And questions of council for the CAO? Seeing none, all those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. 8.2, termination of fire dispatch agreement with Stratford Fire. There was certainly documentation in there. I didn't know if anybody else had any questions. I'll go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is Marty on?
Yes, he is.
Chief Bedard, how many are, or is there a lot of potentials, people that will respond to the RFP?
The ones that have moved recently, so Perth County moved at the beginning of this year, and Howick Township moved last fall, so near the end of last year. And when they sent it out, both got 2 responses back.
Did they go to the same one?
Yes, they did.
Okay. Then we will, whoever we go to, they will have to learn every square inch of Huron East.
That's what the mapping is for nowadays.
Okay. And
So the way the technology's changed within the dispatching system, Stratford had to really upgrade their systems quite a bit. You have to have what's called a CAD system, which is a computer-aided dispatch system. These systems are capable of mapping the calls right to where that call originated from. So when they're dispatching, they will be able to give the proper road name, crossroads, the whole 9 yards.
okay, thank you.
Marty, my assumption would be is that since you were aware that this was coming along, you've been in contact with other fire departments and fire chiefs in the county. I know a number of years ago, I think it was Middlesex that took on doing a dispatching service, or they were looking into doing it or something along that line. And I've never asked anybody at the county, and maybe they would have absolutely no desire to do it, but has the county ever been approached about doing a service like this for all of Huron County?
Not to my knowledge, no. And for them to get into it at this point, it would be millions of dollars.
Okay. All right. No, that's fine then.
And I believe the one you're speaking about is one of the ones that would probably do a price quote on this, and that's Tilsonburg.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? All those, I did not read a motion yet. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Steffler, that the Council of the Municipality of Huron East receipt of the attached correspondence from the Stratford Fire Department regarding their intention to terminate our current dispatching agreement as of Friday, October 21st, 2022, and further that Council authorize the fire chief to draft and issue a request for proposal to seek out a qualified and experienced dispatch service for the Huron East Fire Department. All those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. 8.3, reconstruction of Princess Street, Brussels.
Did you want me to review that, Mr. Mayor?
I guess that it'll only come down to if there's any questions there, Barry. So can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor McClellan, that the Council of the Municipality of Huron East accepts the tender of Curtis Smith Excavating Inc. in the amount of $998,920, including HST, for the reconstruction Princess Street from Dunedin Drive to CN Road Street in Brussels. Comments or questions? Barry, the only one I had was, although the top two were only out about, if I remember, around $20,000 each, both those were about $200,000 higher than the one we went with. You have used Curtis Smith in the past, and we're happy with the service?
Yes, we've used Curtis Smith at least 3 times in the past, and Curtis is actually a local in Brussels, and probably be a hard sell if he didn't get the project. So that's maybe why he was a little more aggressive.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. All those in favor? Motion carries. And I need a motion to receive the officers' reports. Moved by Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor Deal, that the Huron East Council received the following reports of municipal officers as presented: 1 from the CAO, 2 from the fire chief, and 3 from the public works manager. All those in favor? And motion carries. Any correspondence that you would like to review, Mr. CAO?
I think there's only the one item, Mr. Mayor. It's just the request from the Ethel Minor Ball Committee hosting a 10-team co-ed mush ball tournament on June 24th and 25th, with the proceeds going to the Ethel Minor Ball Program and park maintenance. And they're just doing an application via LCBO for a liquor license for that date, and announcing that you've designated a significant event. So there's a motion there for council to designate it such.
And can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor McClellan, second by the Deputy Mayor, that the Ethel Minor Ball Committee, being a committee of the municipality of Huron East, be authorized to apply for a special occasions permit for a 10-team co-ed mush ball tournament, a municipally significant event being held on June 24th, 25th of 2022, with all proceeds being designated towards the Ethel Minor Ball Program and park improvements. All those in favor? And motion carries. Under municipal drains, notice of request for drain improvement, the Coates Municipal Drain. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor Wilby, that the Section 78 request for a municipal drain improvement request by Alex Zielman, Concession 2, lots 29, 30, and 31, Coates Municipal Drain be accepted, and that council instruct GM Blue Plan Engineering Limited to prepare a report 30 days after notification to the conservation authorities. Comments or questions? All those in favor? And motion carries. Under planning, 12.1, planners report consent application C12-2022 for Cody Deal, concession 5, part lots 13 and 14, Gray Ward. And welcome, Jen.
Thank you.
And if you would like to carry on, you can have the floor.
Sure, that's great. Thank you so much, Mayor, and good evening, everyone. I will just share my screen here. Just give me 1 second. Can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Yep, perfect. Thank you. So this evening we have consent application C12 of 2022 in Huron East. The owner applicant is Cody and Mackenzie Deal, and the property is at 43712 Cardiff Road in Ethel, concession 5, London Road Survey, part lots 13 and 14 in the Gray Ward. So this is the subject property here. The purpose of this application is to create a new lot under the surplus farm resident severance policies. And this application proposes to sever approximately 10 acres, consisting of a house and shed and a couple outbuildings, and the proposed retained parcel is 90 acres in size, and contains agricultural lands and natural environment features. The subject property is designated agriculture and natural environment in the Huron East official plan and is zoned AG1, which is our general agriculture zone, NE1, which is our natural environment full protection zone, and NE2, natural environment limited protection zone in the Huron East zoning bylaw. So this is a close-up of the proposed severed parcel. So the house is just in the front there, and then there's a few outbuildings to the rear. So this existing house on the proposed severed portion is surplus to the needs of the purchaser, Evergreen Holsteins, who own other farms with houses within the county. The provincial policy statement does permit the severance of a surplus farm dwelling, which is considered to be a house that is surplus as a result of the acquisition of additional farm parcels to be operated as one farm operation. The provincial policy statement does require that the construction of a new residence on the retained farmland created by the severance is prohibited. And this is addressed through the automatic rezoning that will be applied to both the residential parcel, so it will be zoned to an AG4 special zone, and to the retained farmland, which will be rezoned to AG2, which would prohibit the construction of a new house on the farmland piece. The PPS also does require that the new lot be as small of a size as possible to accommodate the use. So a size that will allow for the house to be maintained, and also an appropriate size for sewage and water services. It is in the opinion of the planning department that the proposed 10-acre parcel, as shown here, does exceed the amount of land that would be required to support a house, septic system, and well. So the proposed consent is consistent with the provincial policy statement, but subject to the conditions that are recommended in this report. So, and I will go through those. This is just a site sketch that was included with the application. And here is a photo of the subject property. So you can see the house there that is proposed to be severed, along with the proposed approximately 10 acres of land with the house. So given that the proposed severed parcel is 10 acres in size, and staff are of the opinion that unfortunately that really does not meet the intent of the provincial policy statement, the Huron County official plan, as well as the Huron East official plan, it is recommended that 10 acres be reduced to 3.5 acres in size. And this is due to the policy framework within the PPS and within our official plan policies. It's quite explicit to say that the amount of land that is contained with the house parcel does need to be of as small of a size as possible to support the residential use and the well and septic system. So I've shown on this air photo here what approximately 3.5 acres would look like, and it is recommended that council do recommend approval of the application, but with the 3.5 acres versus the 10 acres to ensure that this application is consistent with the policy framework that we are working within. I would also note that due to the natural environment features that are on this property, if the 10 acres for the residential holding is severed, there's really only approximately 47 acres of workable land that is left on the retained parcel. So it's not, there's not a whole lot of workable land to begin with on this property, which is also part of the recommendation for the 3.5 acres to be severed. So as I mentioned, the recommended conditions in this application, all of the conditions are outlined on the slide here. It's the bottom two, I guess, that would be somewhat different or unique to this application than for a standard surplus. So the two conditions would be that the severed parcel be reduced to a rectangular shape with a maximum of 3.5 acres containing the house, septic system, well, and outbuildings, and then that the retained parcel do be registered in the name of Evergreen Holstein. This application, other than the proposed size, does meet all of the policy criteria and is recommended to be approved. It's just that 10 acres is a bit larger than what our policies would allow for. So recommended for approval, but with this list of conditions, and they are the standard, as I mentioned, they are the standard conditions that are within pretty much all of our surplus farmhouse severance reports. It's just the bottom two there. So the retained parcel does need to be in the name of the farmer that does qualify for the surplus, as the current owner who intends to stay in the house does not own another farm with a house. So it's required that retained parcel do be registered in the name of the qualifying farmer, and then it's a recommendation of staff that severed parcel be shrunk down from the 10 acres to the 3.5 acres. Other than that, there are no outstanding concerns, and I am happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Jen. Are there any questions of council at this time? Go ahead, Councillor McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's not a big one, just a clarification or a correction, actually, through you to Jen. Jen, on your report to us and also on your PowerPoint, you mentioned this property is on London Road Survey. It is not.
Thank you. I appreciate that correction. I'll make note of that.
Jen, I just had two comments. One, the number 9, I agree that traditionally County Council will always try and shrink the size of the property to retain as much farmland as possible. Historically, with a large number of farmers on County Council, that is always the direction that they do encourage these severances to go. The only other one I'm questioning is number 10. And I understand the statement of the fact that that may be what the purchasers' other lands are under, but are they required to put both parcels under one name? And I guess I'm questioning, why do they have to do that? Why could they just not name it under their personal name?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we ask the name that they plan to put the farm parcel into. So if it was the personal name, that would be fine. The severed house portion will stay in the name of the applicant and current owners. It's just the retained parcel, and they have advised that that's the name that they want to put it in. So we just require one name that that they are proposing to put the farm into, and that we confirm they do qualify. If they wanted to put it in their personal name, there would likely not be a concern with that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of council? Okay, then I will ask for a mover and a seconder, please. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Steffler.
Was there a reason that they applied for the 10 acres rather than 3.5? I agree with the severance, but just been nosy.
I don't know if you heard that, Jen. The question was just whether, can you hear me? Can you hear me now, Jen?
I can now. Yeah, sorry, I'm having
Okay.
some issues with my headset
Okay.
here.
So Councillor Steffler asked if there was any justification they gave of why they wanted 10 acres originally.
So I do believe that the applicant is on the call tonight and may be able to provide some further context. My understanding is that they are interested in some market gardening and such, and for their lifestyle, they felt that the 10 acres would be appropriate. I guess from a personal perspective, I understood why perhaps they wanted to do a bit more than what our policies currently provide for. But under the provincial policy statement and our local plans, we really do need to keep those severed parcels as small as possible. Perhaps if you'd like some further insight from the applicant, I do know that they are on and may be able to provide some further justification as to why that 10 acres is being proposed.
Okay. Cody, you have no obligation, but if you wanted to respond, you're welcome to at this time.
Yeah, Jen, could you pull up that site plan that you had there, the overview, bird's eye view of that?
Sure. Did you want the air photo or the site sketch?
The air photo, please.
Sure. Just give me 1 second.
No one needs to look at my site sketch.
That's okay. Just 1 sec.
Yeah, that one will work there, Jen.
Okay, go ahead, Cody.
Okay, so largely in part, the reason, part of what Jen had said there, we want to retain some land just for future uses. We want to have a few animals and stuff like that. The 10 acres, it's the location of the house and the infrastructure on the property, being that the house is set so far back. What the 3.5 acres gives us is just a very narrow strip of land. Now that kind of ties us if we ever want to put an addition on our house or build a new house or put up any other structures. It's just a very narrow strip of land. It provides us lots of front yard space, but very little backyard space whatsoever. It also, this just kind of basically cuts the corner out of the farm itself. So you'll see on the left-hand side of this picture, along there is a tree line. There's roughly 25, 30 trees along there. And then on the right-hand side here, that's the property line. Now, going that far, if that's the exact 10, well, that's roughly 10 acres. What I was looking for is maybe just, 20, 30 feet behind the barn to give us a little bit of space to move around there. But that's largely in part why I want to do that. And to the point of, kind of having our gardens and doing our own thing and just living healthy, right? There's also the potential, I'm a power line technician by trade, and I have tossed around the idea of starting my own business possibly someday. Now, whether that comes to fruition or not, I don't know. But in that case, that would also require a decent amount of space if I was to ever go that route. It just gives us opportunity and room to grow, and without ever having to go back and try to sever off more if it was ever required. That's pretty much the gist of it.
Okay, thanks, Cody. Jen, if you can bring that down for a second. Just so all the facts are on the table. If in fact Cody wanted to do something with a business down the road, I take it there'd have to be a rezoning then at that time anyways for the property. And as long as it ended up being a farm related business, there's probably good potential he could still sever a piece off the field and rezone at the same time to do something like that, if as long as it's considered a farm-related business on agricultural land. Is that correct?
So as far as a business goes, the AG4 zoning does allow for a home industry or home occupation. So I guess it depends on the scale and scope of what the business would look like, but likely from what I'm hearing, it would likely meet the home industry zone provisions, and a rezoning would not be required. If at the time of the business being established, there was a very good reason as to why a little bit more land would be required, it's possible that a minor lot adjustment or something of that nature could be considered for sure. I guess I would also add, if the issue is really to the north of the barn there, I mean, I'm happy to be a bit flexible, and perhaps we can even amend that condition to be 4 acres in size instead of the 10, to give a little bit more space in behind the barn, if that is what the concern is. It's just from a planning perspective, having the 10 acres is out of scope, I guess, what I would say with a surplus farmhouse severance in general.
Yeah, and maybe you could give us if you have any historical information. I kind of recall that, I'm going to say, almost all of these severances do range between, I'm going to say 3.5 and 5. And even when they get up to 5, there's a little bit of pushback from county council members, but sometimes we had to go that big just because of the shape of the property and where outbuildings were situated. But I know the intent normally is to try and keep it down to that 3.5, but I understand the point and the comments the applicant made, and maybe going to 4 acres may not get a lot of pushback from county council at that time, because they are the ones with the final say. So I guess the question is, if in fact that's something that this council was willing to approve, we should be approving it here before it goes to county council. Go ahead, Jen.
I would also say that if the applicant is agreeable to the 4 and council's agreeable to the 4, it's possible I would have to talk to my director tomorrow that it would not need to go to county council as a disputed consent, and we would say that it meets all of the criteria. If this council would like to see 4 and the applicant would like to still push the 10, they absolutely have the right to do that, but in that case it would still go on to county council. So I'm just, I guess, throwing that out there. It's possible. I can't guarantee anything right now, but I could look into it, that if everybody agrees on the 4 and there's no concern with that then perhaps it would not need to go on to the county and my boss could just sign off on it. But I'd have to look at that when I'm back in the office tomorrow.
Okay, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Jen, please. We go with 4, and in 3 years, Mr. Deal establishes a new career, new business, and he needs 3 more acres. He has to go to Evergreen and beg, and Evergreen says no, he's up the creek. So what do we do here? What is that the only option he has?
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Is to buy back the land from Evergreen?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, once those parcels are separate and separately conveyable on their own, it would be, I guess, at the discretion of Evergreen if they wanted to sell 3 acres. I would also say that from a planning perspective, we would likely be in the same situation as we are in right now, whereby the planning department likely, unless it's established to be an AG3, so an agriculturally commercial industrial proposed business that is required to be in the agricultural designation and zoning. It would likely be a similar recommendation as tonight, whereby we feel that that parcel should be as small of a size as possible to support the house and septic system and outbuildings. So without having the application in front of me, I would just say, as of right now, to add another 3 acres would likely be a bit of a stretch from a policy perspective, unless the business did meet that AG3 criteria. So yeah, I would say yes, it needs to be it would be at the discretion of Evergreen Holdings, in the sense of whether they want to sell them the 3 acres, but also it would require a planning application, which would be going through this same process, and may or may not be recommended for approval, depending on what the application was for.
So not being able to see the geography, the extra half acre, would that does that remedy room around the buildings?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, from my perspective, I would think yes, but I also don't want to speak for the applicant who is requesting the 10 acres in size. So I'm not sure from Cody's perspective how much more would make it better, and whether it's just that 10 acres that they are requesting that they have applied for.
We can be 101% sure, I think, Mr. McClellan, that the county will say no to 10.
Oh, I'm fairly confident of that, and
Yeah.
I don't want to see the whole application get thrown out, because
No.
then the applicant has just thrown money down the drain. So I'd like to make it, and the nice part I like about this is because it's uncontested at this point, that there's a good chance that whether it's the 3.5 or the 4, that it can be signed off by the planning department without having to go to a vote of county council, which I'm going to say is in the applicant's best interest. But I guess in fairness, your question, we could ask Cody if he could answer that. Cody, you did specifically make a statement about that you would like more room behind the barn for access back there and being able to turn equipment around in that. Would that extra half acre directly added on to the back portion of the lot be a benefit to you?
To be completely honest with you, no, not really. Like I said, in terms of where the house is situated, what we have there is a lot of front lawn space, front yard space, but we don't have any room to expand either east or west, nor do we have any room, nor will we have room to expand north. And that's fine, that's understood. And then my concern would be, okay, so let's say we do a smaller section, and then I go back to Evergreen Holsteins and say, oh, I need 3 more acres, which we've already explained that that's probably going to be an issue with the planning department to begin with. What's that worth at that point to me, or to Evergreen Holsteins? What's an acre worth at that point? 5 years, 10 years down the road, you could be talking considerable amounts of money when this can be dealt with just right off the hop. Kind of doing something a little bit larger, providing that space for further growth, if that ever does come to fruition. I'm not saying that's set in motion or anything like that. I'm saying the possibility, right? And like I said, a couple animals, a couple horses or something. I know the wife likes horses and she wants to get back into it, having a couple animals and utilizing the barn a little bit for that. Not having a full-on herd or trying to do farming out of the barn, having like 30 head of cattle or something. That's not my intention. My intention is just to have enough space and room to grow. That 3.5 acres definitely doesn't suit. And a lot of it has to do with the situation of the infrastructure as it exists right now. We're set so far back that even adding an addition onto the house of that 3.5 acres isn't really feasible. It just makes it very tough.
Yeah, I'm just gonna share some of my knowledge over sitting with the planning department for more than 20 years and on county council. But I think the recommendation here is to allow your application to go through as cleanly as possible without it basically having an opportunity to be rejected. If in fact you on your own want to push for the 10 acres, you have the right to still go and do that. I guess my cautioning would be is that you've paid for an application, and in fact, if it gets turned down, you could end up with nothing, or county council just may say, here's what you get, take it or leave it kind of deal. Those are possible outcomes. So I understand what the concern is about a possibility, and that's the way county council, I believe, would look at it, as that the home business could be a possibility down the road. And traditionally, they try to favor that as much land as possible stay in farm production. My personal opinion, I think you've got a good argument both for who's purchasing the land at the moment and county council down the road, that if you were to square it off to what would be the right side of the drawing over to the property line, that would still have a good sales pitch down the road if you were going to expand a business there, because that's going to be the harder part to turn large equipment around in, where the other side of the field or the other side of the lawn would not be. But again, this is your call to tell us that are you willing to accept the 3.5 acres, or do you want to take your shot at county council with the whole 10?
I guess one more question I have. Where is the max? Does it state anywhere where the maximum allowance of acres to be severed? Is there a maximum allowance?
Jen, you referred to the provincial policy statement and the county bylaws and here in East also. So is there a specific number written in there?
There's not a hard and fast number. It's very context specific in ensuring that there's enough space for a septic system, house, and well. So no, there is not a solid number, but there's just the policy context to say that it needs to be as small as possible to support just the house, septic system, and well. So in doing a very rough measurement of the property, it was the planning department's opinion that 3.5 acres seemed to be reasonable. But if the applicant does want to go for the 10, it is ultimately, I guess, a recommendation from local council and then a decision of the county as to whether that 10 would be appropriate. I guess I would also note that my recommendation is approval as we've discussed with that attached 3.5 acre condition. So depending on the wish of council, either you would recommend that it be included with that condition or without, or an amendment to that condition, and then that would be a decision of county council.
Did you have any final comment to make then, Cody?
Well, my apologies. This is the first time I'm seeing the 3.5 acres, so I was a little bit unprepared for that as well. So at this point in time, I'll be pushing it to council. 3.5 acres. Like I said, if you take a look at the 3.5 acres as Jen had laid it out there, that doesn't even to put an addition on a house out to the west side, which is the only way that would be the only spot you would put an addition onto the house. That doesn't leave us literally any room to do that. So I'll have to request to go to council.
Okay.
Or county council, sorry.
Yep, no, I understood. Okay, so Jen, I realize the planning department, based on provincial policy statement here in county and the Huron East official plan, does push for, and although it doesn't state a specific number, they all refer to the smallest as possible. And I understand the comment about the fact that it's got a large front yard, but that's why we always seem to end up with 3.5 acres, is because the farmhouses are so far back off the road that it takes 3.5 acres to actually sever them off properly. And we never try and isolate just the laneway, because that's not keeping rectangular lot lines, which we prefer to do. Having said that, this council, I take it, then could either agree with what you had as recommendations, or make a recommendation that it go to county council with 10 acres, or what, are there any other options available?
Yeah, so council can recommend approval with the conditions that are within my planning report, which include the condition for the 3.5 acres. This council could recommend approval with a condition that the 3.5 acre condition be amended to a different number, if that's what you wanted to do. Or this council could recommend approval without that condition at all, to then say that that they would like to see the 10 acres as applied for be approved, or you can defer or you can deny. So there's a wide range of, oh sorry, like you can't just deny, but you can recommend that it not be approved at the county level. So there's a wide range, I guess, of options, I would say, and it would be up to you as to how you would like to see this go, or what recommendation you would like to be presented at county council.
Okay, Jen,
sorry, I guess I would just also say that the staff recommendation may not line up with the municipality's recommendation, but that would be explained at county council.
Okay, Jen, so then based on that, I have one more question for you, and I guess one more question for Cody. It doesn't hurt anything if it got deferred. The applicant doesn't pay any more money, and if there's an opportunity to come to a different set of conditions, it would just come back to council for approval at that time then, correct?
That's correct. So if this council decided to recommend deferral of the application, then it would not go on to county council on May the 11th, and it would come back to this council with either an amendment, or if the applicant really didn't want to change their proposal, it's also possible that it would come back the same way that it is as of right now. So yeah, I mean, a deferral is possible for sure, and then it would come back to local council first before going on to county council, depending, I guess, on what the resolution would be.
Okay, so Cody, if I can just ask your request at this point, is that you had stated that you were kind of blindsided a little bit. You didn't realize that it was coming through with 3.5 acres. Did you want the opportunity to try and have a discussion with the planning department yourself first to see if there's any leeway that would make something that's more acceptable and usable to you in the possible future? Or would you rather just that council pass it without an acreage recommendation at this point? Or potentially pass it, because I don't know if council will or will not pass it at the 10 acres, so.
Yeah, I'm new to this, so I'm not sure how county looks at things either. It's not something I want thrown out by any means. Like I said, the 3.5 acres is definitely not something I'm willing to accept at this point. I mean, we could go back to the drawing table with the planning group, but that all depends on how much leeway they have as well.
Okay, well, all I can tell you this is that I'm going to say that the planning department has changed a lot in the county over the last few years. And I'm going to say historically, if you come with a good justification of something that makes sense from a planning now and future planning perspective, I would say you've got an ear to listen there. So you have that opportunity. It doesn't cost you anything other than a little bit of time. But if you would prefer not to even take that step and just ask us to go forward, then all I'm asking for is your direction of what you're hoping to see at this point.
I guess we can go for the deferral, and I'll talk to the planning group a little further on this. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's a good move, and I think if you can put together, and I use this term loosely, but a business case of why there's good merit and good planning in increasing the lot size, that you may have an opportunity to increase it big enough to suit your needs going forward.
Okay, so from here, then where does this goes back to the planning group, and then we meet here again next month, I guess? Would that be correct?
Well, so if council defers it at this point, I don't know if we actually put a date on that or not. I'm not 100% sure. But if we defer it at this point, then anytime after this evening, you can contact the planning department, and then you set up your conversations with them to have your discussions. You put all that together, and then once those discussions are finished, Jen will then bring another report back to this council to review at that time.
Okay.
Okay. We didn't necessarily get anything resolved, but hopefully we will down the road. So at this point, I'm wondering if there's any council member that is willing to put a motion on the floor to defer this. Moved by Councillor Steffler, second by the Deputy Mayor. Any other comments or questions at this time? Seeing none, all those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. We are down to council member reports. County Council, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Charging station. I think they finally have their act together. And this week or next week, Charger crew is coming around to look at the sites where they are going to go in the county, and then sign an agreement with the county, and it'll go forward from there. So hopefully we have some power in the near future. And then I think the only other thing that really struck me, Mr. Mayor, was there's going to be a lot of road paving going on this summer in the county. So check before you drive. You might have to do a lot of detours, but
yeah,
pretty not a lot last week.
Right. Okay. Any other boards, committees, meetings, or seminars that anybody wanted to comment on at this time? Okay, seeing none. Jessica has on here about my comments about good roads. So, and I'm hoping actually through OGRA, the same as Roma and AMO, that up to a time afterwards, you can actually get recordings of it. And I don't know if council wants to see the whole thing, but we had an engineer, and I'm not sure where in the States they brought this gentleman in from, but it was extremely interesting to listen to him. And he talked about the flow of traffic and the way things have always been planned in the past, and really gave some good examples of how we think we're doing something right, but it actually has a negative effect to it. So I'm just going to point out a couple of things. There was lots of things that he talked about. And there was a couple of them that really struck me. So his engineering firm had actually been hired by a number of towns. Now, they didn't always have the same results, but they had been hired by a number of towns. And he was talking about, and this result had happened a number of times, but he said, yeah, the mayor of this one, I don't know if he called everything a city, but he said that they were concerned about safety on Main Street. And so they thought if they brought in an engineer, the engineer could review things, would recommend dropping the speed limit, making Main Street safer for both pedestrians and vehicles alike. And that would be the end result. And then it wasn't necessarily the council making the decision, just the council approving a recommendation from an outside source. But the recommendations, he said, a number of times came back to actually increase the speed limits on main streets. And that sounded odd when he first said it, but he said, most accidents don't happen necessarily because of speed. They happen because of speed differential. And the problem is when you make really wide, comfortable streets, lots of parking areas, but they're away from the flow of traffic, then people feel comfortable when they're driving. And a lot of people will drive to the speed they feel comfortable with. Other people will drive exactly the speed limit. And it's that differential in speed that was causing a lot of traffic accidents, where in fact, when they increased the speed, the people that were driving the speed limit still drove the speed limit, and everybody else was still traveling the same speed, and it reduced the number of accidents that they were having on their main streets, which it just seemed counterproductive when he talked about something like this. But then here was another example that I thought was really interesting. And he talked about even in our residential areas, because we want things to look nice and roomy, we try and make streets as wide as we can. If you allow parking, you give extra room for that parking. And he says quite often you make the streets so nice for driving on that then you get complaints and you start putting up a lot of stop signs and this and that to stop traffic from flowing, because you've made it so nice for people to just whip through the neighborhoods. And he says some developers have started to realize that if you make your residential streets a lot smaller, it actually does a couple of things. One, people on their own will drive slower, and you actually save money because it doesn't cost near as much to build the roads because the roads aren't as big. Now, in fairness, I sat down, had a meal with Barry, and we had this discussion. I'm going to say from a public works perspective, this may not be ideal, but I can give a live example. My daughter lives in a beautiful neighborhood in Waterdown. And every time I go there, the normal flow of traffic, I'm going to say from all public, is 20 to 30 kilometers an hour, because the street is very narrow. They allow parking on both sides. And if you meet another vehicle, you almost have to find a driveway area just so the two of you can scoot by. But nobody has any desire to drive any faster, which is great, because if a child runs out between two vehicles, and if you're only doing 20 kilometers an hour, there's a good chance that you're going to have lots of time to stop. I had never, ever thought of it that way until this guy talked about it and how much sense it made. So I guess all I'm wondering is, it's not quite often our job to lay out what our plans are going to be for residential areas. And maybe now that Huron East is just starting to get into a boom, maybe this is a discussion that if we had some outside information, that it's something we might want to consider as a municipality of different ways to do things. But I think we also do need to talk to Public Works, because Public Works then, if you make your street smaller, they've got the responsibility of where do you put the snow in the winter, things like that. But if it can also help reduce the cost of the individual neighborhoods, because you're paying for smaller streets, which possibly makes the lots bigger, or you can intensify the number of houses you put in an area. Anyways, his talk went on a lot longer, but it was amazing the number of points he brought up. Oh yeah, one other thing. He talked about the unfortunate part is too many areas grow long before anybody ever had a look way down the road of what they were going to be like. You know, like you take the city of Toronto. Sure, you've got the train station, Union Station there to get people in, but you've got basketball, baseball, hockey, everything all within a 2-block area, plus all the business people at the same time. And no wonder it's a bottleneck anytime you're either going to or coming from a sporting event or something like that downtown. This gentleman says he lives in a town of 14,000 people. He says at 7:40 in the morning, he says, if you go to Main Street, people are ticked. It's a complete bottleneck. Everybody's upset. Traffic's not flowing. He said, if you go there a half hour later, he says, there's not a car in sight because everything is cleared out. But I think the whole bottom line is of what they're talking about is that if you start looking at these things before you really start to grow, then maybe you can solve a lot of these problems. And maybe there are some cost benefits to solving them well ahead of time. So I just didn't know if there was an opportunity. And Mr. CAO, I don't have any schedule or anything else, but this might be something interesting for all of council to get some third-hand information of things that are good or bad or future planning, since we are certainly hoping that some of this development that's going on in here in East will continue to expand the municipality. So that's really all I had for the report at this time. Thank you. Are there any requests by members at this time? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Property standards. I am getting comments about a couple in Seaforth, and we had that interesting conversation between 4 and 6 about some properties in Brussels as well. And CAO had a proposal or a thought on property standards that I think all of us should listen to. And I wondered if we could maybe have a review of our property standards very soon at a future council meeting when there wasn't much on the agenda, and we could look at what the CAO's idea is, or look at other ideas to toughen our property standards bylaws up and see if we can do something with these miscreants that are willing to let things fall apart on our main streets and in our communities. Thank you.
Okay, so that's just information for the CAO at this point?
Yes, please, or clerk, going forward to schedule for a meeting, yes.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other requests by members of council? Okay, seeing none.
Hello?
Sorry.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead, Brenda.
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, this is maybe more of an ask for you or the deputy mayor. But I was asked if maybe would the county be considering looking at a potential official plan amendment that would maybe give the lower tier municipalities a few more abilities or input toward any future wind turbine projects that might come in our direction. And I know our hands are relatively tied, but would there be anything like that being looked at by the county?
Okay, I have not heard any talk about that, but we will, between myself or the deputy mayor, we will bring that question up at county council. We do not meet tomorrow, but we meet next Wednesday. So we can ask staff at that time if there's any considerations for changes to the official plan.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I listened to a webinar, whatever, from the IESO, Independent Energy Supply, I think it is, a week ago, 2 weeks ago. And the expected growth in EVs, etc. I think Ontario, the impression I got was Ontario Hydro is going to find themselves short. So this IESO was going to be looking for short-term, medium-term, and long-term proposals to generate electricity. And to me, short-term and medium-term kind of struck me as more green, more wind and more solar. And that ties in maybe with what Brenda is Councillor Dalton is thinking. They may be more lenient towards solar and wind in the near future, and we know how happy everyone is about wind, and I would hate to see good farmland go to solar. So maybe the county could find out something about that.
Okay. All right. So we should remember between the two of us to bring that up next Wednesday then.
Yep.
Okay. Are there any notices of motion by any member of council this evening? Okay, seeing none.
Councillor Deal.
Oh,
had-
sorry. Notice of motion from Councillor Deal. Okay, so I have a motion moved by Councillor Deal. Do I get a seconder, please? By the Deputy Mayor, and that is that the Council of the Municipality of Huron East direct staff to establish tracking protocols in regards to maintenance and improvement requests received for municipal drains in order to improve communication and accountability. And I have absolutely nothing wrong with the motion. I do believe, Mr. CAO, that you talked about the fact that, or there was something in the report that you've kind of already started something, but that this would just take it a step farther. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. One of the things that I identified when I came on board, we have a lot of municipal drains. And of course, one of the experiences I've noted is that a few of the drains, and certainly both from a maintenance and from a improvement standpoint, seem to be lagging fairly late in terms of delivery. So I do want to establish, and I appreciate Councillor Deal's motion, to establish some tracking system that both tracks the progress of those projects, but also provides reminders, excuse me, reminders to staff that, it's time for a checkup or to go contact the engineer or contact the drainage superintendent to check on the progress of that. And if it's not moving forward, to take corrective action, of course, in a more timely fashion, as opposed to at some point in time when the landowner starts reaching out to staff or council for that matter in terms of their concern. So that's the purpose of that tracking system.
Right. I liked when I read the report. It had a lot of merit to it. The one thing I can't remember is, although it talked about yourself, I believe the clerk, public works manager, and I believe there was someone in drains also that would all be aware of this tracking system and how it was going. My only concern would be is communication to the property owner is the key thing. If there's a delay, there can be a delay, but they need to understand why, or at least be notified that there's a delay. And when this many people are tracking it, who's the person that's going to be charged with the responsibility of making sure that the property owner has been properly communicated to?
And depending upon whether it's an improvement or a maintenance, the maintenance would fall to the drainage superintendent. If it's an improvement, then it would probably fall to that your drainage engineer. So their responsibility will be to make the communications between them and the clerk, I suppose, depending upon the circumstances. There would be that one point of communication, and we'll set that up sort of in the protocols of that tracking system to make sure who's ultimately responsible. The reason why I've got so many people kind of listed there is to make sure everybody kind of knows where the project's at. So if for whatever circumstances the landowner phones me up, rather than me having to go, well, just a sec, let me get a hold of my drainage superintendent, I can pull up the tracking system and give them an answer right away, and know exactly where that drain's sitting at this current time and what status it's got. So it's just a really great tool to be able to keep all staff informed, maintain communication, make sure that the entire staff know exactly what the progress is. But also, it's not to sort of spread the responsibility in terms of who's actually responsible. It's just to help communication.
Okay, and I'll go to Diane first. I saw your hand up earlier. Councillor Deal.
Thank you. Yes, that was the one thing I was going to add to that. With all that list of people, that the landowners also be CC'd or whatever you want to call it in those communications, so that they kind of have a heads up as to whether they're planting this week or planting next week or what's going on. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So you to Brad. Brad, would it make any sense when you're talking about the engineer, if you're going down through your checklist and you contact the engineer and say, have you talked to Farmer X yet about where this particular project's at. Would it make any more sense for your staff or whoever is in charge to actually get that answer from the engineer and then go back to the farmer with that? That way it eliminates that whether or not the engineer does in fact get in touch with that farmer or not. That's all I just don't want something to be sort of, it's left up to the engineer to contact that farmer and, oh shoot, I forgot to, you know, and then the farmer's left again out of the loop.
I think that we can certainly incorporate the protocol. If it's meant to be a simple phone call, I highly doubt that's probably the best way to do it. I would prefer that all those communications be in writing, so that, you know, you can have the phone call, but follow it up with an email, CC all the staff, so everybody knows what the conversation was. And if it's not going to be through an email, at least a memo to the file to kind of document what the conversation was, so that, you know, 3 months down the road, if, you know, Brad gets hit by a bus, okay, and so that someone knows exactly what the conversation was, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor of the motion? And motion carries. Thank you. Are there any announcements by any members of council this evening? I kind of have a request. If the clerk would please, I was at the office today and I forgot to stop in and pick up my nomination paperwork. Could you email that to me, please, Jessica? Okay, thank you. Information items. The only thing I saw, oh no, there was a couple there. Anything you want to point out, Mr. CAO?
You got two, you got your landfill committee and your Vanasta Recreation Center Daycare Committee meeting minutes there for approval. And I believe there's a motion.
Okay.
And of course your council expenses for March.
Can I get a mover and a seconder for the motion, please? Moved by Councillor Chartrand, second by Councillor Morrison, that Huron East Council received the following board and committee meeting minutes as submitted. I really debated about this, but I would like to make a comment. In my opinion, it's the same for council as it is for the mayor. It doesn't matter whether I was on the yay or the nay side of any vote. Once council has made a decision, it's my obligation to always go out and say, this is the decision of council, and to support that decision. Because I think as a community, it's important that we work as a team. Once a decision is made, that we all work to make that decision work if possible. And I think it's unfortunate when we, after the fact, debate things out in the public. My preference would be that we try and all say that this is the decision, and I hope it's a good one, and I hope this works out better for everybody in the long run. So I'm just going to leave it at that, but that's certainly the way I try and handle my position, and I hope the rest of council prefers to handle theirs that way too. All those in favor of the motion? And motion carries. Nothing under other business. Bylaws. Can I get a mover and a seconder to introduce the bylaws? Deputy Mayor and Councillor Wilby. That be it hereby resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaws 33 and 34 for 2022. Bylaw 33 of 2022, a bylaw to authorize the execution of a site plan control agreement between J.N. Reynolds and Construction, J.N. Reynolds and Construction and the municipality of Huron East. And bylaw 34 of 2022, confirm council proceedings. All those in favor? And motion carries. Can I get a mover and a seconder for bylaw 33? Moved by Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor Steffler, that be it hereby resolved that bylaw 33 for 2022, a bylaw to authorize the execution of the site plan control agreement between J.N. Reynolds and Construction Limited and the municipality of Huron East be given first, second, third, and final readings, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the seal of the corporation be affixed thereto. All those in favor? And motion carries. And 17, we have no closed session this evening, and the confirmatory bylaw. Oops, let me turn the page. Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor Deal, that be it hereby resolved that bylaw 34 for 2022, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council be given first, second, third, and final readings, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the seal of the corporation be affixed thereto. All those in favor? And motion carries. Mover and a seconder for adjournment. Moved by Councillor Steffler, second by the Deputy Mayor, that the time now being 8:16 p.m., that the meeting do now adjourn until May 17, 2022 at 7 p.m. And before I take a vote on this, I do not want to put Paula on the spot, but this is my understanding, Paula's last night. I didn't know if council themselves had anything, but Paula, is there anything that you would like to say to council?
Just thank you for all the learning experiences that I have gained during my time at Huron East, and I have appreciated everything and working with everyone here, and I'm gonna miss everyone.
Paula, I know we are going to miss you, and I'm going to tell you that you know, if you went back 20 years ago, I used to do a lot of programming. I used to write software, everything else, and you got into security stuff that I have absolutely no idea where you learned it, how you learned it, or anything else, and certainly made me feel really comfortable that you were on top of all of that stuff all the time. So thank you very much for what you brought to Huron East, both the council and the residents. We've appreciated the time that you've spent with us. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor McClellan, or you're just waving goodbye.
Just
Okay.
waving goodbye.
See, if we were in person, we could have bought her a drink. Okay, all those in favor of adjournment? And motion carries. Thank you very much. Take care, folks.
Good night.
Night, everyone.